The hearing will come to order. I'm pleased to welcome Acting Administrator Robert Lightfoot to the Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Subcommittee hearing to examine NASA's Fiscal Year 2018 budget request. Mr. Lightfoot and I worked well together during his tenure as Director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Mr. Lightfoot, thank you for serving as NASA's leader during this time of change, and I appreciate you joining us here today. The administration has proposed a fiscal year 2018 budget of $19.1 billion for NASA, which is a reduction of 2.9% for the current year level. And while this overall cut is less than many other agencies that have experienced in the President's budget request, it still reflects a significant reduction of $561 million. This budget request attempts to navigate a challenging fiscal environment, but would disrupt ongoing missions and delay future exploration for years to come. There are proposals to cut science missions and to eliminate the entire Education Directorate, using the rationale that NASA could do without these programs under a reduced budget. Other research programs are left with insufficient financial resources, which will make it impossible for NASA to meet its own management plans and launch schedules. For human exploration, the current administration picks up where the previous administration left off by projecting a lofty vision for space while providing a budget that keeps the vision from leaving Earth. The Space Launch System and the Orion crew capsule are designed to break our human space program free of its decades-long tether to low Earth orbit, eventually sending our astronauts to Mars. In addition, SLS will provide NASA with a versatile platform to deliver planetary robotic science and space-based astronomy missions. SLS is the vehicle that will make possible many of NASA's goals to push the boundaries of exploration. I look forward to initial launch of SLS and will work to see that a crew launch will follow soon thereafter. I believe we must have an accurate budget to reflect these launch decisions and to meet our nation's exploration goals. If other pieces necessary for exploration are not ready, we will lose time and waste funds in the near term that could be used for other important activities down the road. NASA, I believe, must ensure that the rigor with which it reviews its own missions is applied to all of its activities and avoid pressure to send astronauts to space at any cost. There's growing sentiment that NASA should change the way it does business, that it should be a buyer of commercial transportation services. Were it not for billions in development funds from NASA acting as venture capital, there would be no companies attempting to one day take crews to the space stations. Even with this investment, the companies NASA will use for commercial crew services are behind in schedule. The program has increased in cost, and independent observers cite the inability of our partners to meet contracted safety standards. And while risk is inherent in anything NASA chooses to undertake, there is no replacement for proper analysis and reasonable precaution when lives and the resources of the nations are at stake. When it comes to agency operations, I'm encouraged to see the investments in information technology and cybersecurity in this proposed budget. NASA is very popular with the public and also has a significant amount of data for scientists to use in understanding the universe around us. I believe it's incumbent that NASA be able to share its findings, but the agency must also maintain a secure cyber environment for operations. NASA's innovative ideas often involve significant risk and also require significant investment. This subcommittee has strived to provide balanced funding to the overall NASA portfolio, while also ensuring that ongoing activities are appropriately funded to accomplish NASA's missions. As with any administration, the proposed budget represents a snapshot in time based on decisions made with the most relevant information available. As this subcommittee moves ahead to produce our annual spending bill, I look forward to working with you to achieve the appropriate balance for NASA's missions. Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Administrator Lightfoot, for being here this morning. This is my first NASA hearing, so I'm especially pleased to hear your comments and testimony. And I want you to know, Mr. Chairman, that coming from a state like Alabama, where you have NASA facilities and you have a history of space as part of your economy, you may not think of New Hampshire as a space state, but we have our own claim to space. The first American in space, Alan Shepard, is from Derry, New Hampshire. And of course, the teacher in space, Krista McAuliffe, who died so tragically in the Challenger accident, was from New Hampshire. And today, New Hampshire companies are helping to supply NASA with technology to improve both low orbit and deep space exploration. And New Hampshire is also a leader in space weather and in designing, building, and operating major instruments on NASA satellites to study solar physics. The New Hampshire Space Grant is inspiring a love of science in K-12 students and helping undergraduate and graduate students through scholarships, fellowships, and internships. And through research grants and education programs like Space Grant and EPSCoR, every state is a space state. Unfortunately, the FY18 budget request for NASA cuts many of the programs that keep the agency connected to the rest of America. It eliminates the NASA Education Mission Directorate, including the Space Grant and EPSCoR. NASA education programs have had challenges, but I don't think that the way to meet those challenges is to eliminate the programs. Mr. Lightfoot, when you and I met in my office, we agreed that one of NASA's most important jobs is to help kids learn to love science and technology. And I look forward to working with you and the chairman to ensure that NASA can continue to help inspire and train the next generation of technical workers, whether they're building rockets or building American industry and products in the private sector. Overall, NASA's budget request is $19.1 billion, a cut of 3% below the FY 2017 level. But those cuts weren't applied equally. In addition to eliminating education programs, the budget proposes deep cuts to next-generation transportation systems and earth science, items that are priorities of this committee because they help NASA reach the agency's calling to explore, discover, teach, and inspire. Chairman Shelby's discussed the need to fund Orion and the Space Launch System, the SLS, needed to send humans beyond low Earth orbit. So I'll take a minute and talk about Earth science. When it comes to climate change, NASA's job is to observe the Earth, to tell us factually what is happening to our planet. NASA doesn't say why Earth's climate is changing or what policies we need to take in response. But we do know from surveys published by the University of New Hampshire's Carsey School of Public Policy this spring that 73% of Americans say they trust science agencies such as NASA for information about climate change, nearly twice as many as trust friends and family or political leaders. It's a solemn responsibility for NASA. Yet NASA's 2018 budget request cuts Earth observation by more than 8%, ending 5 missions. Now, closing our eyes to what's happening to our planet doesn't mean that it's not happening. And people in my state of New Hampshire have no doubt that the climate is changing because in the Granite State we see it every day. The steady increase in yearly temperatures, the rise in annual precipitation are already affecting our tourism and outdoor recreation economy that contributes more than $4 billion a year to New Hampshire. This isn't the time to cut back on NASA's Earth observations. I look forward to working with Chairman Shelby and my colleagues on the committee to ensure that NASA continues progress on high-priority Earth science missions and research. And finally, I want to end by noting that NASA contracting remains on the Government Accountability Office high-risk list, where it has been listed since 1990. Now, we all recognize how challenging NASA's programs are and how important your technological development is. But the quality of NASA's program management needs to match the quality of its science. And I think that's the point of the GAO. It's continuing to list NASA. Again, thank you for testifying today, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing.
Administrator Lightfoot, welcome again to the committee. All of your written testimony will be made part of the hearing record. You proceed as you wish.
Well, thank you both for having me. Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to discuss NASA's FY18 budget request. We appreciate the subcommittee's support, especially your bipartisan commitment to the constancy of purpose for NASA. The FY2017 Consolidated Appropriations Act and emergency supplemental funding for Kennedy Space Center and Michoud Assembly Facility are concrete contributions to this vital continuity, and we appreciate the subcommittee's hard work on NASA's behalf. NASA's historic and enduring purpose can be summarized in three major strategic thrusts: discover, explore, and develop. These correspond to our missions of scientific discovery, exploration, and new technology development in aeronautics and space. NASA's missions inspire the next generation. They inject innovation into the national economy. They provide critical information to address national challenges, and they support global engagement and international leadership. The FY18 request is $19.1 billion, and it supports a vigorous program that leads the world in space and aeronautics. While we had to make some difficult decisions with regard to earth science and education, this remains a good budget for NASA as we move forward. In aeronautics, NASA advances U.S. global leadership by developing and transferring key enabling technologies. In FY 2018, we will award a contract for detailed aircraft design, build, and validation of a low-boom flight demonstrator, which will demonstrate quiet, overland supersonic flight, opening a new market to U.S. industry. In science, NASA is currently using 20 spaceborne missions to study the Earth as a system, which supply Earth science data for weather forecasting, farming, water management, disaster response, and even disease early warning. This request supports 2 new missions by the end of 2018, the GRACE follow-on mission, which will track water across the planet by precisely measuring the Earth's gravitational field, and ISAT-2, which measures ice sheets, clouds, and vegetation canopy heights. In September, Cassini will make the final of a series of 22 daring dives through the 1,500-mile wide gap between the planet Saturn and its rings as part of its grand finale, end-of-mission maneuvers. OSIRIS-REx will conduct a search for elusive objects known as Earth Trojan asteroids on its journey to the asteroid Bennu, and in 2023 will return a sample from Bennu back to Earth. We launched the Mars InSight lander in May of 2018 to study the interior structure of Mars, and are on track to launch the next Mars rover mission in 2020. The James Webb Space Telescope continues on schedule for its 2018 launch. Webb will be a giant leap forward in our quest to understand the universe and our origins. In 2018, we'll launch the recently named Parker Solar Probe on a mission to fly closer to the Sun than any previous mission. Parker will join 18 missions dedicated to studying our nearest star. NASA's space technology request includes investments in deep space optical communications, high-power solar electric propulsion technologies, and advanced materials. In late 2017, both the Green Propellant and Fusion mission spacecraft and the Deep Space Atomic Clock instrument will be delivered to orbit. The International Space Station, our first step on the road of deep space exploration, is delivering the knowledge and technology we need to keep our astronauts safe, healthy, and productive on deep space missions of increasing duration. Working with commercial crew partners, NASA plans to return crew launch capability to American soil in 2018. We're also continuing development on the Space Launch System rocket, the Orion crew capsule and exploration ground systems, and the technologies and research needed to support a robust human exploration program. In 2019, we plan to launch an uncrewed exploration mission using the new Heavy Lift Launch Vehicle and the Orion spacecraft on a mission to lunar orbit. A crewed mission, EM2, will follow not later than 2023. In the early mid-2020s, we will develop and deploy critical life support and habitation capabilities leading to crewed missions beyond the Earth-Moon system. Missions launched on the SLS in the 2020s will establish the capability to operate safely and productively in deep space. With your continued support, we look forward to extending human presence into space, exploring potentially habitable environments around the solar system, deepening our understanding of our home planet, and pushing our observations of the universe back to the time when the first stars were formed and opening the space frontier. Mr. Chairman, I would be pleased to respond to your questions and those of other members of the subcommittee.
Thank you very much. I'll first recognize Senator Manchin. He has a conflict in scheduling.
Let me thank the chairman and the ranking member very much for that consideration. Administrator Lightfoot, over many decades, my state of West Virginia has developed an aerospace center of excellence. After all, I think you know we're the home of the state of the Rocket Boys. The star of the recent film Hidden Figures was Katherine Johnson. She's a West Virginia State College graduate from White Sulphur Springs, and we are proud to have your NASA independent verification and validation facility, the NOAA consolidated backup for its operational satellites, the commercial sector, such as Orbital ATK, Lockheed Martin, and others. Our own West Virginia University supports NASA heliophysics work, NASA Restore L mission, and until recently, the asteroid redirect mission. It's hard to believe that we do all those things, and people sometimes forget. I like to refer to this grouping as an ecosystem of technology that supports one another, the region, and the nation. This has been the result of hard work from Senators Byrd and Rockefeller, Congressman Mollahan, and others over the years. And now Senator Capito and I are carrying the torch. We are proud to be part of the NASA team, and I trust that we can work with you and your colleagues to continue to build and develop the capability for benefit of this nation. While I'm disappointed in the administration's decision to eliminate NASA Office of Education, sir, I'm puzzled at the explanation provided in your testimony that I quote, NASA will continue to inspire the next generation through its mission in the many ways that our work excites and encourages discovery by learners of educators. This suggests that NASA will move to a spectator sport experience versus the actual hands-on experience of developing instruments and robotics that the Office of Education currently funds. In my state of West Virginia, through the NASA Space Grant, the EBSCOR program, thousands of students ranging from K-12, undergraduate through postgraduate, the students have interned at NASA facilities and now part of your workforce as engineers. And then if you could describe how you plan to replicate the same kind of hands-on development, sir, of activities that grow our STEM workforce with elimination of the NASA Office of Education and provides training to our next generation scientists. I don't know how it can be done without hands-on.
Yeah, so great question, Senator. For us, the way we're looking at this is with the balance of the work we do in our mission directorates, which is several research grants, several challenges and prizes. West Virginia University, for instance,
Right.
won recently, has won, I think, 2 years in a row now, won the challenge related to robotics. That's funded in our Space Technology Mission Directorate and not in education. And so our goal is to try to use those kind of technical challenges we have in our mission directorates to gather the next teams that come in. Now, will it replace what we have in education today? No, I would never say that, right?
Yeah.
But I do believe it's a way that we can inspire. And we've been working on pulling together our outreach activities we do through the mission directors to try to compare those with what we're doing in education and maybe bring a more integrated solution to help inspire that next generation. I truly believe our missions actually do inspire the next generation as much as the hands-on work does, and so that's what we're trying to do.
Let me ask this question, if I may, sir, because my timing, I don't want to.
Sure.
I'd like to talk to you about NASA's Restore L program. A satellite servicing mission that seeks to prove satellites can be robotically refueled and repaired in space. It has significant cost savings potential by lengthening the lifespan of government and commercial satellites and providing new methods for spacecraft management. It's my understanding that NASA recently designated the Restore L program as a confirmed mission and is on schedule for a 2020 launch date to refuel Landsat 7, a U.S. Geological Survey satellite. In considering these developments, I'm perplexed by NASA's fiscal year 2018 budget requests for the Restore L program. For one, the specific Restore L funding line has been zeroed out, but the budget request indicates that NASA should proceed with an extensive amount of Restore L tasks. I don't know how that is possible to be done. So how can you request for the Restore L program includes conflicting messages from stay the course to outright cancellation?
Yeah, so what we're doing in satellite servicing technology is we believe NASA should be developing the technologies, and our teams at Goddard and West Virginia are part of that team. Will be part of what we're trying to do. We're still going to develop the technologies that allow us to do satellite servicing, whether that's rendezvous and proximity operations, which.
But how does that sync with your 2018 budget?
So we've got $48 million in there to do that effort. That's the satellite servicing effort. And then we take that, we think this is a great opportunity for a public-private partnership to allow commercial folks to take our technologies that we develop and build the systems that you're talking about. Whether we need to demonstrate that in an actual mission, like Restore-L, I think we can just do this technologies and let the commercial public-private side go decide if they want to be servicing satellites on orbit.
Sir, I would respectfully ask you to reconsider the Restore-L program for what it's been doing and how it continues to be done. I'm not sure the private sector is going to step in with so much left undone. I just don't think that they'll jump in unless it's a win-win for them.
Our goal is to knock those technology items down so they will jump in. That's what we're trying to do.
We're going to be monitoring very closely, but thank you, sir, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it very much.
Mr. Lightfoot, I have a number of questions. I'll start with exploration budgeting. In the year 2017 Appropriations Bill, it directed NASA to provide a consolidated budget for exploration that properly accounts for the launch schedule NASA is actually managing. It's my understanding that proposed exploration budget is set to a slower timeline, and that this disconnect between NASA's requested funding and management schedule creates some uncertainty and drives inefficient decision-making. I believe in the aerospace business, uncertainty equals more cost. At least we found this on this committee. I have a number of questions here. When will NASA provide this subcommittee, the funding subcommittee, with the required budget detailing the actual cost necessary for the initial launches of SLS rather than what is being proposed?
So as you know, we're in the middle of a relook at this schedule based on the breach report. I think we sent up to you guys, the breach notification report we sent up there.
How long will that relook take?
The relook?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're getting back with me at the end of August.
Okay.
With what they think it's going to be. We still have a technical challenge with the weld, and we still have a technical challenge with our European service module. So we're trying to get an understanding of where those are before we come back with a full-up plan.
What's really causing the delay in providing us with the consolidated budget?
The challenge is actually making sure we've got these two technical items knocked out before we come up and tell you what we need, because if I don't have them knocked out and I bring you a number and we have more challenges in that area, that'll make it tough on us. The plan, though, is to, once we launch EM1, is to launch EM2 roughly 30 months after that, and then go into an annual cadence of launches. That won't change. The real challenge is, when is that first launch going to be? And that's what we owe you.
Russian engines, you're very familiar with these. The Department of Defense is complying with congressional direction to transition national security launch activity from vehicles that use Russian-made rocket engines to those which use a domestically produced engine by the end of 2022, is my understanding, while maintaining assured access to space, which there's a national security factor here. Congress is, we're grateful to NASA, which has provided both its expertise in this area and experience in producing a report that evaluated some of the various options currently being pursued by space launch companies. Couple of questions. As we continue to debate how best to preserve DoD space launch capabilities while transitioning to American-made rocket engines, will you work with this subcommittee to ensure that NASA's findings inform the policy discussion?
And the findings you're talking about are our independent study we did?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. I think be glad to provide that report to you guys.
I understand there is sensitive proprietary information in the report that NASA produced, but will you provide a copy to this subcommittee under the appropriate transmittal
Yes, sir.
parameters?
Yes, sir, we will.
Habitat research, which is you know a lot about. In the 2017 Omnibus Appropriations Bill, provided no less than $75 million for habitation research activities to support human exploration beyond low Earth orbit. I supported this. The committee supported this activity. Marshall Space Flight Center, that you're very familiar with, has been the center of space habitation since the development of the Skylab in the late 60s, and continues today with handling the life support systems and science operations of the International Space station. The fiscal 2000 budget proposes $120 million for this emerging habitat research. And I want to know more about NASA's long-range plans for managing the program's funding. My question is, what role do you see Marshall Space Flight Center having in this new habitat activities beyond Earth, beyond the low Earth orbit?
Yeah, I think when you think about Marshall, you immediately think environmental control and life support, the systems, the advanced systems we need for the future that are probably going to be inside the habitat, the structure of the habitat. We already know we're going to pull on those capabilities as we move forward. Marshall also has experience in building the nodes that we had for the space station, so there's structural support there as well. What I'd love to do is get our team up here and share what we're doing and where we are in the next step BAA process. And I think that'll help your team understand the layout of where we are and the decisions we need to make, probably more in the 2019-2020 timeframe.
But they do have a lot of experience there.
Absolutely.
The commercial crew. For the commercial crew program, the GAO has identified milestone delays and increased program costs of $138 million. The original commercial crew program contract stipulated certification for crew launches by 2017, but the reality is that the anticipated certification will now be in 2019. Slip. The fixed nature of the contract puts the burden of delays and additional cost on the companies, but NASA is also accountable if the scope of the contracts change. Further costs are incurred by NASA as the agency continues to depend on Russia to fly our astronauts to the space station. A couple of questions. With respect to delays and cost increases, did NASA fail to accurately specify the contract requirements when it awarded these commercial crew contracts, or did the companies themselves fail to fully grasp the scope of what they were bidding on?
Well, I think for us, it's the standard development activities like you were seeing on SLS and Orion. When we start building for the first time, there's some challenges that come into play. We have debates with our providers often on the requirements, but I think you could argue it's a little of both, you know, in terms of understanding our requirements better, but also them going through the process of developing hardware for the first time.
What assurance can you give this committee that there will be no more cost increases or delays?
Well,
Did you do that?
Yeah, I think it's a fixed price contract. I don't expect any more cost increase. There may be delays, though, just on the sheer nature of what they're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish there.
Crew safety. Is NASA experiencing any pressure from the commercial crew providers to loosen contract requirements to enable flying to the space station sooner?
No, what we've done is we've used the loss of crew and loss of mission metrics that we have to actually drive design changes into their systems. And if you look at the last Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel meeting, the comment we got back from them was that we were using that system effectively and we were doing the right way to increase safety of the commercial
Would NASA
providers.
be open to submitting to an independent review of any waivers the agency grants that would impact safety requirements for crewed vehicles launches from U.S. soil?
I believe we already do that with our own teams. I'm not sure who independent would come in and help us, but our teams do that pretty well already. That's part of our role is in terms of certifying whether that vehicle flies or not. I have to, in my position, not as the administrator, but in my day job as the associate administrator, I have to sign off on the certification of the designs.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to follow up on Senator Manchin's questions about what would replace the elimination of the education programs in NASA. You know, I grew up in the post-Sputnik era, and I think in response to Sputnik, what Congress and President Eisenhower did was to understand that the best way to compete was to make sure we had kids who were educated in science and math, the STEM subjects, who could then go on to careers at places like NASA, who could develop the next generation of technologies. And we followed those programs with a number of very high-profile missions from NASA. You know, I remember sitting in my class listening to Alan Shepard when he went up in space to that launch. I remember being with the rest of the country enthralled when we landed on the moon. And, you know, those were unifying factors for the country. And they were premised on this idea that we need to make sure everybody understands what NASA is doing, is excited about that, and particularly when it comes to kids, that they have the educational opportunities to be able to participate in growing the technology of this country and of NASA. And so I know that you've spent 28 years growing 52 space grant consortium and 850 affiliates nationwide, and that's been critical to continuing to keeping kids engaged in what's happening at NASA and in space and STEM. So how are you going to keep that network together if you eliminate the education programs?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, one of the things that we were working on before this budget came out was a better execution arm of our education process. And so we were already looking at that in general, and that's when we saw that we could have some connection with our outreach program. Will I get to that same network? Honestly, I don't think I will have that same network, but when we looked at the ability to actually still use our missions, just like you described a minute ago, those kind of missions that inspire the next generation to actually stay in science and math, utilize our actual technical challenges needed in our missions to get challenges out there for the students, for education organizations to engage in. That's the way we're going to go more in that direction. And that was just the decision we made when we put the budget together. So.
And how will you reach out to those underserved and underrepresented groups? Because those are the ones most at risk in terms of getting excited about STEM and about the scientific foundation that NASA's built on.
Again, we believe we can set up our challenges that we have today, like CubeSats and things that we do in space technology, the research grants. We can look to the HBCUs as an example of a place we can go for research grants for space technology and our science STEM activation activity. But those are all funded by the mission director. It's not by education.
Well, I certainly disagree with the idea that you're going to zero out the education program and EPSCoR, and I hope that this committee will be persuaded that that's not the right direction to go in. One of the other areas that I'm concerned about is the budget proposal that would end NASA's participation in the Discover mission. Now, we've spent nearly $120 million on Discover. The mission's currently functioning on orbit. In the context of the federal budget, that's not a huge piece of either of NASA's budget or of the federal budget. And under your proposal, the Earth science instruments would not be turned off. It's just that the satellite would continue to generate data, but NASA would no longer process, store, and analyze the data. I don't understand what the justification is. Why does that make sense?
Well, we believe we have 20 spacecraft already on orbit that give us the same data, if not better data, based on the sensors that we have, and we'd rather put our research and analysis efforts around those spacecraft instead of Discover in terms of what the science level that we're getting from the instruments on Discover.
So are there a list of those other instruments and can you detail exactly how those would provide better information?
Absolutely, we can get that to you. Take that one for the record, and we'll be glad to get the information where we think we would replace the Discover instruments with instruments we already have on orbit today.
Well, it seems foolish to me to refuse to spend $1.7 million, which is what processing and analyzing that data would continue to cost, when we've already made this huge investment in it, and to decide that we're not going to use the instruments that NASA has already built just seems like the kind of thing that people in New Hampshire and across this country are frustrated about the way government works, to make a huge expenditure and then to say, we're going to collect this information, but we're not going to use it because somebody has a political issue with that information and what it says. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Madam Ranking Member, and Mr. Administrator, welcome. First of all, I want to thank you for the funds put in the budget to help upgrade the Wallops flight facility, which you would agree, I hope, is an important part of the NASA system. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
All right, and we're grateful to see that additional investment. I have a follow-up to a question I understand that Mr. Manchin asked, Senator Manchin, regarding Restore L and the proposal to somehow merge that into a DARPA program. As I'm sure you know, the DARPA satellite servicing activity occurs in geosynchronous orbit, which is, of course is a very different orbit than the operational environment that the low Earth orbit, which is currently what Restore L services. So by transitioning this away, by defunding Restore L, are you saying you're going to abandon the low Earth orbit and not provide a refueling capability in that orbit?
I think what we're saying is that we think, just like we've done on the International Space Station, where we've demonstrated a lot of the techniques that the team at Goddard has developed over time in terms of refueling and the activities we're doing on orbit today, we believe we can develop the technologies and let the public-private partnership inside of this house take our technologies and build a system to do the activities in low Earth orbit. And that we don't need to do, we NASA don't need to do the mission. We should do the technologies and then transfer them to industry. That's what we're saying.
If you could please get this committee a cost analysis about how that actually will be more cost effective given the investment we've already made in Restore L. Can you provide that for the committee?
I think we'll be glad to.
All right, thank you. Let me ask you about the PACE Commission. The PACE mission, because this is a mission designed to get important information about the oceans, especially with respect to the health of various fisheries, and important to all the coastal areas in the United States. And my question is, given that your budget proposes to zero out the PACE mission, how do you propose that we get that important information for our coastal economies?
Yeah, we have a couple other opportunities to have that. First of all, can I explain the way we made the decisions that we made for PACE, RBI? What we did is we did a programmatic assessment. We did a decadal assessment. Was it called out in the decadals or not? And as you know, PACE was not mentioned in the decadals. ACE was, but PACE was not. We think there's a way to go get that data differently. We also want to see what the decadal for Earth Science comes out in 2018. We're going to have a new decadal come out. So PACE, because it wasn't a decadal, a couple others because they weren't performing as well, and a couple others where we had science that we thought we could get from other missions. With the budget box we were in, dropping from the 1.9 to 1.7 roughly that we did in Earth Science, that was how we made the decisions we made. We're already talking with Goddard about how can I go get that data that you talked about in a different way than doing the entire PACE mission.
But just so I understand the answer, I think I do. I mean, you were essentially given a number by OMB that you were supposed to hit. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So it was not a decision based on the merits of the program in the sense that it started out with an instruction to you to find cuts. Is that the case?
Yeah, we were given a total number in the budget, and we had to go manage to that number.
I got it. I think all of us like to see the budgets put together by the experts originally, what they think the country needs going forward. And Mr. Chairman, Madam Ranking Member, look forward to working with you as we consider this budget, because in addition to those cuts, which I think will have very harmful impacts, there's also a cut to the Hubble Space Telescope program. There's some language in there saying we're going to find deficiencies with no indication of really what that is. So it sounds like really another example, frankly, of you got a number, you just said we're going to cut this by 15 million and we're going to find deficiencies. Does that kind of sum it up?
I'm not familiar, but I'll have to go back and look about the Hubble cut. I may have missed that one in what we've got. So I can take that for the record and let you know, but I thought we did that for a different reason. But can I take that one and get back to you on that one?
That would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to hear you say that. I think that there are lots of areas where further investment would help our economy and innovation. Thank you.
I do, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The IG said that NASA has still not implemented an agency-wide risk management process for information security. And I know that in 2018, you have submitted a request for $278 million for IT services. That's an increase of $18 million above the 2017 level. Do you think that will address the IT needs of the agency, and will that accomplish the recommendations that the Inspector General has for NASA?
Well, we hope so. As you know, the cybersecurity challenge that we have is tough for everybody, and it's always changing. So we've tried to put in place the structure we need to address those issues. We're also trying to address the FTARA requirements that we've got as well. With the increase, I think it's a total of $32 million, but 18 is in the
Can you
area.
explain what the FTARA requirements are?
Yeah, there's, oh man, now you're going to make me remember that acronym. The FTARA requirements are that were levied on every agency in terms of how you're doing your cybersecurity, how you're handling your networks. So it's a much larger set of requirements that we were given, I think about 2 years ago, that we've been working on. And so part of this is to actually implement those requirements as well that are there to make sure you're, a couple things, make sure your cybersecurity is okay, but also make sure you're doing acquisition in the right way as well, protecting what you buy in the cybersecurity arena as well. So that's what we're doing with the money that we've got that's extra in the 18 budget. We're proposing to do that.
And where are you going to get the expertise to help you figure out what you need to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's one of the challenges we have federal-wide, and from some meetings I've been in, is getting the cybersecurity professionals. It's been tough. We've had a couple people come in and a couple people leave pretty quickly because they're pretty marketable in the private sector. And so what we're trying to do is utilize our contract workforce if we can, bring in people to help us from that perspective, but also see if we can hire folks that have the experience and actually have a better understanding of our networks and how they work. So it is a challenge, though. I mean, I've been in several PMCs, even from the previous administration, where the hiring of cybersecurity professionals is a challenge for us.
And are you working with the Department of Homeland Security
Absolutely.
And their cyber center as you're looking at what
they do continuous diagnostic monitoring, and so we're piggybacking on what they're doing, and they're helping us look at our networks as we go forward. That's part of that $18 million.
Thank you. One of the things that we're very proud of in New Hampshire is the University of New Hampshire, where our researchers have played a central role in expanding knowledge about a number of the phenomenon that NASA looks at, one of which is heliophysics, and they've been part of the heliophysics mission, that's a mouthful, including the magnetospheric multi-scale mission, which was launched in 2015. So can you talk about the impact that the MMS mission has had on our understanding of heliophysics and why that's been important?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So one of the phenomena that the MMS is helping us with is this magnetic reconnection. And that is it's kind of in the plasma universe that's out there is trying to understand that connection, because what happens with energy? Where does the energy go when these reconnections occur? We have actually discovered at least 30 of those with MMS. And what MMS allows us to do, because it's 4 spacecraft flying in formation, we can actually get a 3-dimensional view when we have one of those occur. And it's a phenomenon everywhere. People have been wondering if it happens in the entire universe. So it's really advancing our understanding of that particular energy and plasma connection as we go forward. So it's been a fascinating mission for us, no doubt about it.
And as you point out, it's really critical because, as we've seen, changing space weather conditions really pose risks to our satellite infrastructure, to our power grid, to our other national security assets. This is something that we're talking about in the Armed Services Committee. According to a 2012 report released by Lloyd's of London, a severe space weather event could cripple the U.S. economy and cost up to $2.6 trillion with a T dollars. So can you talk a little more about the roles that NASA and NOAA play in understanding and predicting space weather?
Yes, ma'am. We do what NASA is, I kind of break it into the research side and the operational side. NASA is responsible for helping develop the research models that help us predict these activities, and NOAA really has the operational aspect of the warnings and telling us when we should expect a flare or a storm.
And so are you confident in our space weather infrastructure?
Wow. I think we are doing what we can do today. We'll see if an event occurs, if we've got the right I will tell you on the space station, because the other thing about space weather is our humans. You know, we
Right.
worry about that from a human perspective, and we worry as we go deeper into space. I believe we're getting the tools that we need from our 18 missions we've got studying the sun to better make our models better. The models are just that, though. They're just models. And until we actually exercise them with an event, which we hope doesn't happen, but until we exercise them, we'll know. I think we're as good as we can be right now with what we know. But we continue to learn. That's what you know, as I like to say, every mission we fly answers one question but causes us to ask 10 more, right? And so that's the challenge as we go forward. But I think that interaction between NASA and NOAA and the way it's working is working pretty well.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, and I apologize for not hearing your opening statement. So I think I'm probably going to ask a repeating question, but I do want to hear your answer. Most of our nation's civil space assets that support our commercial enterprises are housed in the low Earth orbit, LEO, weather in particular. The ability to service these assets rather than replace them has potential to save hundreds of millions of dollars without the loss of public safety and critical scientific data. Dan Coates, who's the director of the National Intelligence, recently testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee that China and Russia are developing a range of weapons to disable our low Earth orbit, our satellites in low Earth orbit. Yet the President's budget proposes no funding for the Restore-L program, which operates in LEO. Isn't it more important than ever now, I think, to bolster the resilience of our assets in LEO while also enhancing NASA's capability and lowering operational costs by demonstrating the ability to refuel these satellites?
And what we're doing is we think our job is to develop the technologies to allow those missions to be built and let commercial folks take the technologies we develop, because we've got $48 million in the 18 budget to continue rendezvous and proximity ops, the robotics work that we're doing. But we think if we can have the industry pick up the technologies and build the missions themselves, then we can have a good public-private partnership.
Is industry doing that now?
Yes. There's
So percentage-wise of in this space, would you say how much percent is NASA and how much is private industry?
Oh, wow.
I mean, it doesn't have to be 100% accurate, so.
Can I get you a number? Because I know the companies
Yes.
that are involved with us, that are working with us today, and I think I can probably come back with a much better answer to that. I won't NASA-size it and make it perfect, but I'll get you a good answer on that if that's
All right.
okay.
So you're comfortable with the phasing out of this funding, that the core missions will be picked up by the private sector that then will perform government functions as well?
Yeah, I actually believe that there is a demand. As you said, there's a demand for servicing satellites as we go forward. The real question is, and I actually think satellite servicing is very important. The real question is, should NASA be building that, or should we build the technology and transfer them and let industry supply that servicing as a commercial buy?
Okay, as you see that now, is that a different direction from NASA in the past?
I don't think so necessarily.
No.
We always thought we should do the technologies
Okay.
and satellite servicing.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to move to the NASA's Education Office and the programs within it. West Virginia is proud to be home of the next generation of rocket boys, and we don't want to lose this. We were the first generation rocket boys because Homer Hickam is from West Virginia. So, but just in this past week, 2 different teams from WVU have won national honors. A team from WVU won the 3-day Mars Ice Challenge, which challenged teams to extract water from simulated Martian surface. And across the country, at the Intercollegiate Rocket Engineering Competition, a WVU team won first place in the 10,000-foot launch category against 100 teams, also emboldened on the side, Wild and Wonderful, which is what we call our state. So these are just recent examples, I think, of great accomplishments and I think jobs of the future for our West Virginia students. So I'm deeply concerned about this elimination in funding. We're going to work, I think you've heard from others, to restore these cuts because I think it could have a chilling effect on the educational programs that NASA is offering all across the country where otherwise they might not be available. So what would you say to these programs as to how they're important and importance and value to NASA's overall mission?
Yeah, I think they're critically, the programs you talked about are critically important. They're also funded by our Space Technology Mission Directorate. They're not out of education. Those are challenges that space technology does. We'll continue those challenges in the mission directorates that we have today. And what we've been trying to do with those challenges, like the Mars Ice challenges, set those up so folks can, it's almost citizen science in some ways. It help us solve our problems. But that particular example is funded actually in space tech, not in education, and those things will continue. We think that's the way to inspire.
And the Office of Education, I know that NASA travels to elementary schools sometimes, Know Your Astronaut, those kinds of things. Are those what the programs that are in the Office of Education?
The programs in Office of Education that we're talking about eliminating, EPSCoR, Space Grant, MUREP, and SEEP is what are the.
That's the elimination? EPSCoR is another one that's important in our state as well to a lot of our educational institutions. So I think we need to rethink this strategy, and I'm going to be working on that, I think, across the aisle and with the chair, right? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Bozeman?
Yes, coming from Arkansas, I just also want to emphasize the importance of those programs. You're nodding that they were important. So what's going to happen once you eliminate the Office of Education? Are those going to go away, or are you planning on doing it in a different way? Or?
Yeah, so the 18 budget proposal is pretty clear. We're eliminating EPSCoR, MUREP, SEEP.
And you agree that those are important programs?
I think there's value in those programs. So so as an agency, what I have to do is figure out a way within my other mission directorates to not necessarily repeat those programs, but actually get the value out that it allows me to connect with the kids, the students going forward. I'll still have downlinks. I'll still have CubeSat challenges. I'll still have those kind of things that we'll do in our mission directorate areas. So that's the difference.
Okay. Well, again, I think, if you polled the committee, that there's probably is significant concern in that area. The other thing that was mentioned I want to follow up with, and I think it's also a theme of the committee, is the cybersecurity. Have you all been successfully hacked?
Successfully hacked. We have had, we get attacked, but we have what's called a Security Operations Center.
Right.
That I'm trying to think if we've got. I'd have to go look and see if we have an actual.
I would be surprised
hack.
if you haven't.
But we have been, but I want to make sure that I don't imply that the hack has a lot of different levels, if that makes sense.
No, I understand.
And so what I'd rather do is provide you the data on how many attacks we've had and how many we've staved off, right? And I think I can get you that information pretty quickly, and so you can kind of see. But we are a target, just like most federal agencies, but because of our data, we pay that very close attention to that in our Security Operations Center.
No, I understand, but OPM, IRS, they've all been hacked very, very successfully. And I'd be surprised if you haven't also. So I guess the question is, $32 million in additional. Again, you're talking about and I understand, how difficult it is to compete with at the level that you're trying to do. But I think that's something that really needs to be looked at, or we're going to get ourselves in trouble.
Yeah, we absolutely agree. And I think if you look at what we need to do for FATARA and what we need to do for cybersecurity, a lot of the things that are coming down from DHS and other agencies, what we really worked on is trying to improve our connections with them, because they have information we need sometimes. And our teams have, we put in something called Enterprise Protection Program. And our Enterprise Protection Program talks not just about cyber, but all the other vulnerabilities you might have as an agency going forward. So we're trying to improve that, and that's why we asked for the more money in that area.
So you're working with Homeland Security and stuff, and I guess, so this is the recommendation from the agency, the additional $32 million, or does this come from OMB or what?
This is from us. It's from the agency.
Okay.
What we think we need.
So, very good. How confident are you that with the NASA budget that you'll be able to reach its goal to return crew launch capability to American soil in 2018?
Well, with the budget we have, I think we can do it. I think the technical challenges may cause a delay. Those are fixed price contracts, so I don't expect any increase in dollars. I think they're all dealing with technical challenges going forward, but one of the reasons we did fixed price was so we wouldn't have to worry about the additional cost.
So the dollars are there, it's more just in the technology?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lightfoot, you've been associated with NASA a long time. What today, in your judgment, is the biggest challenge NASA has? I know you have many challenges. You're out there challenging everything.
So I have to pick one. I think that the biggest challenge for us is stability, constancy of purpose, and that's why I said what I said at the start of my remarks. Is we've been pretty fortunate to have good bipartisan support on the Hill. We keep that constancy going. The ups and downs that you can get if you don't have that are really difficult on the teams, and
I think we're going to keep bipartisan support. I'm going to give all I can. I believe Senator from New Hampshire will too, just like Senator McCoskey and I did work together.
But I think that's the biggest threat to me is from an uncertainty. The technical stuff is hard, and that's what we love to do, though.
Certainty is important. Certainty
Yes.
of funding is important.
You got it.
How important is certainty of funding, or as much as certainty as you can bring through the appropriation?
Yeah, I think it's critically important for us to do the long-term planning. We're not working on one-year programs here, and so if you look at things like flat-out years, I mean that's if you look up for the next 5 years, that's $4.5 billion in lost, potential lost buying power. Well, how do I plan for that, right? So when you look at FY18 and all the out years are notional, it's really hard sometimes for us to do the right kind of planning that we need to do. That's the biggest challenge for me.
But NASA for years has been on the cutting edge and has to maintain the cutting edge of science. And we all benefit from that. It's not just what we put up in space, but all the ancillary benefits that come to our economy and to our scientists and engineers.
And the aeronautics
correct?
arena. And the aeronautics arena as well. What we do in aeronautics is critically important.
Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one final question. And Mr. Lightfoot, in my opening statement, I talked about NASA's challenges with the GAO's high-risk list. And I know that this is something that you've been working on. But does NASA have the budgetary and human resources to address the concerns that NASA has raised? And what's it going to take to get off that high-risk list?
I am trying. That's one. That has been an interesting. I've been up here 5 years now, and as the associate administrator, and we've been on the high-risk list. I think we've been on the high-risk list since it started, since GAO first did the high-risk list. And so we have. There's 5 categories that they ask you to kind of get graded on, and 3 of those were fully compliant. And we weren't, 5 years ago, but we're fully compliant in 3 of them. 2 of them we're not yet, and the 2 that weren't, the 2 that they haven't fully complied with is what they call proving it over time, right? Proving that we're doing better over time. If you look at the GAO high risk report, while we're still on it, they give us a lot of credit for improvement over the last 5 years. And the teams have put a lot of things in place, whether it's earned value management, whether it's joint confidence levels that we use. The challenge we have is we have some big programs coming up. We've got James Webb, we've got Space Launch System in Orion. Those are big multi-billion-dollar programs that we've got to prove that we can manage appropriately. So I understand that piece of it. I think the challenge is going to be when I've talked to the GAO about this, and they said, you got to prove us that you're going to do those, and maybe we'll get you off the list. My worry is that I'm going to have another set of programs right behind that are going to be just as complex and just as complicated. So I understand the point. The GAO high risk is how you're managing programs. Make sure you're being good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. But in some respects, I kind of hope NASA is on the high risk list, because that means we're trying to do some hard stuff. And if we get it wrong from a programmatic perspective, we need to learn from it and do better. But if I get so risk averse, I don't really push the envelope. And to me, that's where I get a little. You got to balance that. You got to balance pushing versus being too vanilla just to get off that list. But that's my personal opinion, having gone through it. GAO, I will tell you this though, GAO has been outstanding in helping us with our practices. I give them a lot of credit for helping us be better in the program project management arena going forward. So it's been a good partnership. We're probably not there as well as they want us to be yet, but I think we're improving.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
senators may submit additional questions to you, Mr. Lightfoot, for the record, and would request NASA's response within 30 days.
Okay.
We appreciate your appearing before us today. The committee now stands in recess subject to the call of the chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee
Have a
is
good
adjourned.